we're actually going to be working while streaming today, because we're going to be continuing to watch this video. And we left off at the part where he was talking about people like sneaking up, astronauts like sneaking up objects into space to resell for a lot of money. And I think it's just about to start getting to the good stuff. So we'll go ahead and start this, and I'll just leave it playing while I work. This is kind of what I do on a regular basis anyways, so this is going to be cool. But all right. I'll play it here.
To have a replica of that spaceman, they would want that to have the other stuff that mission commander carried up there, which was, I can't remember the exact number. It was something like 500 to 1,000 envelopes that had all been postmarked from the moon, and he carried them up there, went to the moon with them, and was going to go back and sell them. This envelope went to the moon with me, mission Apollo, whatever it was, right? And so when NASA found this out, that this was kind of going on, I mean, I'm sure there was a little come to whatever meeting where they dragged all these astronauts away and like, don't ever do that again kind of a thing. But yeah, so I felt, venerated to know that my astronaut laying on its back that I saw 40 years earlier was actually there. It was part of that target. They just didn't know at the time. That made me feel good. I'm very sorry for Stanislav for having to go back to Poland because of what happened. Anyway, next, weeks go by, maybe months go by, and my trainer, I don't think she was actually my trainer anymore. I was actually I was what was called operational, which means you completed your training. They were using you on real intel targets.
Nothing ever seemed to work for me until I found Earthly. They helped me.
My bad. I'm gonna put it on my browser so we don't have to deal with ads. We are at, let me just let this play so I can figure out where we left. 14 minutes and 20 seconds. Normally I don't mind ads too much, but I don't want to. I don't want you guys to have to listen to that.
Where they dragged all these astronauts. Don't ever do that again, kind of a thing. But yeah.
Okay.
So I felt, venerated to know that my astronaut laying on its back that I saw,
so now I have to go
40 years
another
earlier,
one.
Was actually there. It was part of that target. They just didn't know at the time. That made me feel good. I'm very sorry for Stanislav for having to go back to Poland because of what happened. Anyway, next, weeks go by, maybe months go by, and my trainer, I don't think she was actually my trainer anymore. I was actually I was what was called operational, which means you completed your training. They were using you on real intel targets. But occasionally, a target would be pulled, and that person would go over and put the target on the podium, and then sit there but say nothing. But you always had to have, you either had to have a target tasking sheet or you had to have a folder, and they didn't want to give a remote viewer the folder because a remote viewer might look through it, and come back with a really fantastic session. So there was always a way that, what you were doing was kind of buffered from the viewer themselves. That target might have been pulled, brought into Fern, who would type up a target tasking sheet, say your coordinates are, and give those to you. You carry that over there, and you just put that on the table. And look at it. My coordinates are. You'd fill out your heading, coordinate ideogram, and there you go. The next one I did that was of significance to me was the caverns, the lava tubes. I was describing these massive circular openings with frozen stalactites and stalagmites that were like crystals. And I sketched this huge structure that was in a giant cavern, a massive, like a city, like a civilization, but of an unusual kind of architecture. And I sketched life forms that were present there, in scale to this stuff, to give it some scale. This was stage 6 sketching. And my target feedback was Olympus Mons. And Olympus
you said you observed life forms there?
Well, yes, but that doesn't mean they're there. That means if the structures I'm perceiving were created by a life form, then my ability to, in the event arc of time, right, to sort of pick up aspects of that would have been possible. Or I could have just seen, what I had sketched in terms of ability and how I had perceived it. And maybe I perceived it with life forms and I thought I should, put them there for scale. You don't know as a remote viewer exactly why it's there, but your assumption, of course, is that and it's an AOL, a massive city, underground, life forms present. That's your AOL. And you declare that because you don't want that to drive the rest of the session. If you don't declare it and you accept it as something, or you don't declare it and truly let it go, and you get back into the session, the next thing that happens is that again, or a piece of that, or some version of that. So you have to be really careful in dancing with the structure about how you're developing the data and following the structure so that you don't allow AOL to drive the session, any piece of AOL, one piece. So in doing all of that and going on with it, and because as a visual perceiver, primarily, I was sketching, the aesthetic data, the aesthetic dimension of this thing, and putting, a habitation place that was centered in this, that was massive. It was like a small town, maybe, right? And when I say small town, I mean like a small town like Albuquerque, something like that. Right. Not that big, but there was a lot of structure that was present there that I tried to capture it with my best in stage 6. The feedback was this was Olympus Mons, which is the largest volcano
in the solar system,
right, on Mars. And in years later, when talking about these lava tubes, because I don't even know that there was in the 80s that there was an understanding of lava tubes there. So it was just kind of passed off in the feedback of your descriptions of colors, your descriptions of these kinds of things was interesting. And oh, by the way, it coincided, or it was the similar data developed by other viewers who have done this target in the past, which you could be given that folder, and you would now look at all the other Mars sessions that somebody had done on that target. And your file, your results, your session, your summary would be added to that folder, and it was called a historical folder. So what are they looking for? Because they can't give you feedback, right? They can't give you what it is. They don't know. So they just use the correlating data that multiple viewers over periods of time develop relevant to that particular target. Okay, so now we now know that data correlates from multiple viewers over multiple times on the moon. We know that multiple viewers correlate data in established patterns, repetition, over years or months, and working as targets. So now, what stops us from going further? Well, nothing. So now, if the person driving this particular train really wants to fully investigate Mars, then that's what they would do. There would be a new concept of a target with a new set of coordinates, and that may have already been done 10 times, maybe more, right? And those coordinates now, that becomes another target that they work. And then there becomes another target that they work. And I know there's one that's out there now that a lot of people reference, which is this Mars visitation where there's a life form there. That
and I think it's Sidonia, I think, was who the target was.
Yeah. I've read that. I actually thought it was Pat Price. You said it was Joe McMoneagle because of the dating on it, and very well could have been. But clearly, that's another monitored session. And if you're reading it with a critical read, you see where the monitor is steering, right? Steering this viewer, which is why I really never liked nor felt that monitored sessions using that technique were credible. I won't know whether that's right or wrong until we actually do a manned mission to Mars. But I know now that there is, again, looking back to your session back then when there wasn't a lot of feedback available, and looking at it now, which is what viewers always need to do, is looking back on it now, I know that, the major plan for a manned mission to Mars is to go into these lava caves. Why? Because you're protected, from ultraviolet, you're protected from sand and windstorms, you're protected from rock storms, you're protected from meteorite strikes.
It sounds like there's water there based on what your description of the...
They highly suspect that there is water there, which they are, preparing in the training processes. If there's water there, it means that you can, melt it, filter it, you can use it to grow food, you can use it to sustain life, and you can make rocket fuel with water, right? The hydrogen. So all of that is important for them to know. And so, describing things that are cold, that AOL stalactites, AOL stalagmites, look like crystals, cold, rigid, hard, everything that you start perceiving and writing down becomes, at the time, worthless because we don't have any feedback. But now, looking back, it's good feedback. It meant something. Now, we also know that we didn't know at the time, but in these giant lava tubes where lava has flowed underground, or it's top ground, and as it cools, it creates a shell and it keeps going through it. Is that these are really massive. I mean, these are hundreds of meters, some of them, in diameter, and some of them not that much. But some of the caverns that they see there have been now reports that they estimate that some of these caverns.
Hello, Delia. Hello, Elias. How are you all doing today?
Could easily be the size of the island of Manhattan. So that's when they get in there and there's apparently an atmospheric bubble as the lava tube goes another direction or something, and something expands it, and you get these giant caverns, and then it goes elsewhere. To me, in looking at it many, many decades later, it's always fascinating to see that kind of thing. Now, looking at the dark side of the moon, that was done. Looking at various landing sites in the moon, that was done.
Did they find anything on the dark side of the moon that was interesting?
No.
Nothing.
Really, no. And darkness does not affect a remote viewer. If the intention of the remote viewer is to see in natural light or something, then they would report darkness or dark shadows or shades of gray. Because how a viewer sees it, for how I see as a viewer, I've always described it to people as it's kind of like looking through broken green glass. It's not a video image rolling in front of you. It's always kind of fleeting and twist and turn. I think the best example of how a viewer sees is to go to the movie Minority Report and look at that. where they're pulling up the images that are coming from the, what they call precogs. They pull those up, right? And the images are broken, fragmented, pieces. Some close in, some far apart, but they start putting them up and trying to assemble them, right? That's almost like a stage 6 sketch. They're putting it up and assembling it, and they're going, got this, got that, and they can't tell what it is. They have to look for, pieces, evidences in it to try to determine what it might be. A partial number, an open door, a swing set, or something else. That's what allowed them in that movie, which I thought was probably one of the better unintentional remote viewing movies that had ever been made. I mean, it honored all of the rules. Not 100% accurate. Didn't expect it to be, right? Never trust the results of one precog operating independently of other precogs. That was the Minority Report. They always went with the majority on it. All of those things, right? It all fit the rules. They always used in consonance with other modalities of investigation or investigative modalities. So in that case, they had other things they did with it that they pieced together, their own intelligence, etc. It was a good remote viewing movie, and the visuals that were there were like looking through broken green glass. They don't have a defined edge. They're changing. They're kind of moving. They're sliding around. That's how a visual, at least me, that's how I see. I can't say how another visual viewer sees. I can look at a sketch, right, and say, you saw, I showed you evidence, some of that today, where you got to see how some people might see it very clearly, but how they objectify it on the pages becomes quite pedestrian, right? And others of them perceive it and then are detailed, analytical in their sketch, right? Where it looks like a pen and ink drawing, right? It's fantastic. And then there are others in between them. So the visual viewing was always the objective, but not everybody started out that way, as I shared. Intention governs how you create balance in that ability. But I would get an image, and I was good at non-analytical sketching. And how I got good at that was at BYU in a biology class. It could have been Biology 101. It was very early on. And I remember I had this old professor who was a real stickler for scientific sketching and scientific record keeping, that kind of stuff. And what he did was he made us...
Stickler is just such a silly word, right?
Look at slides, the standard bill of fare of dyed slides, different like onion, cell, and other stuff. Fixed slides. And so those would be handed out. Everybody get, like 3 of them with a rubber band around them. And you had a microscope. And you had a lab notebook. And so the objective was to put a slide under and then to look with dominant eye through the single barrel, and then, without looking at the book, at the page, to sketch what you see. That is how you become non-analytical in your sketching. Well, his objective was that as a scientist doing things like that as soon as you take your eye off the barrel and you start filling in the sketch, that now he didn't use terms like analytical overlay or anything else. He said, now you're imagining what it's supposed to look like. You're calling on memory and imagining what it's supposed to look like. I mean, that was amazing, right? That a guy is calling it that in the 70s when I'm at university. And then so you started off really bad. Things did not look like they were supposed to look like. But as you trained your brain to get...
Oh, sorry, folks. I messed it up. Did I?
your hands
Okay.
to sketch, it got better and better and better. And you'd go to a different slide and get better and better and better. And once we had done that, like say Tuesday, we spent our entire
Oh my
class
gosh,
on laptop
sorry.
doing that. Then so Thursday, back again. This time, different slides, stereoscope. So now you got a stereoscope and you're looking both eyes in. Don't take your eyes off. You sketch what you see without taking your eyes off off the microscope. And that was my first exposure to something called non-analytical sketching. There's a really good book called Drawing on the Right Side of the Brain, which I think must be in its 35th printing now. That was one of the books that was at the remote viewing unit as well. And it's a really good book to teach you non-analytical sketching. And I've seen it improve.
Yeah, I actually took that in high school, and it really did improve my sketching. I didn't read the book, but the art teacher taught us about using that method.
Remote viewer sketching, like 20-fold.
Okay, Maps, bet. Just send me your location.
A book. I recommend people get that. The other exercises that they would do there is, in the unit, is they would put up an easel with paper on it, what we used to call butcher paper, and you would put if you were dominant right hand, you put your right shoulder forward of the easel so you could not look back and see what you were sketching. And then your trainer would put something like a coffee cup on a table in front of you. And your objective was to draw that coffee cup without looking. And again, it would start off as something not of this world by the time you finished it. But then you would practice and practice and practice them. And then when you accomplished that, they would put a different object. Why were they doing all this? Because they wanted you in your mind's eye as you are detecting something in waveform, and your conscious mind is decoding it, and you are visually perceiving it through that detect decode process, that your ability to objectify it rapidly and without imagining what should be there was critical to the process of being a good remote viewer. So that's why they were doing that. And back to these sessions of things that you're seeing, that's how a visual perceiver would turn around and sketch those kinds of things. Put it down there. So now the next question is about, so did we ever go deeper? Mm-hmm. My evidence of being there said yes. One of the targets that I did, two of the targets that I did, were called Open Search Out. Okay. Now, what did that mean? It meant that we could take, you could figuratively take the known galaxy in which we reside, and you could take that, or you could take the known universe, which is now known as a finite body. It has an edge to it. It began from something that's been expanding outward. It's not infinite anymore. There's an edge. Or even mathematical calculations that depict the edge of the universe. I love that idea. I'm not disappointed in the fact that it's not infinite, because if it came from somewhere, where did it come from? And if it expanded into something, what did it expand into? Right? Those are thoughts that really intrigue me. So if you just take our galaxy and you were to take the concept of that galaxy and use a Cartesian system for dicing it up, right? 100x, 100y, 100z, right? And they were numbered 1 from 100. You could say, pick something or go after something you were really interested in. But the way in which that became an address for a concept of the target, it could be something like, X52, Y48, Z20, something like that. And that then would constitute the concept of the target, and the line of the individual assigning coordinates to it. So the coordinates get assigned. Now, remote viewers, blind, take the coordinates and start. The theory was simply this: you threw 4 viewers out there. Even if you put them out there at different times, it was analogous to a shotgun blast, right? Out into the Milky Way to this concept. And somebody would hit something. Somebody would get into something. Somebody would find something, because not only was there an address there, but there was kind of this concept elaboration that went with it that said, something should be perceivable. that became an addition to the concept. So now viewers go out, and if all 4 people come back with scrambled eggs, I mean, nothing, interesting or usable, then they'll keep everything, but that target becomes inert at that point. So they would try it again weeks later. These were not things that were done systematically day after day, week after week, because remember, there were real operational things going there, and some people were also doing training targets, or also calibration targets, the same thing. And then there were these things being slipped in. And so all of those things would happen. And during that stuff, and these open search outwards, I can tell you that some of the targets that I was on, that I hit, that when the feedback came in and I looked at the historical data, mine correlated with that. And throughout my entire time of teaching remote viewing, when I was teaching it from like 96 to 2005 and picking it up again and stuff, I will typically at certain points in time, depending upon the class or what level the class happens to be, I'll give it to coordinate remote viewers. But I will punch in those historical targets again and collect the data from thousands of viewers and correlate that with where we started back in the unit and see what's evolved into now. It just gets more elaborate and better, and I will tell you why. It's called morphic resonance, right? It is the process of ritual and morphic resonance, the 100th monkey effect. Essentially what this means is that each new generation of viewers gets better than the last. They pick up in a not in a literal way, but in a figurative way. They pick up where the other generation left off. And I can honestly say that the viewers that are trained now, oh my gosh, the viewers that have been trained since probably 1998, that the level.
Dude, that's wild. That's just like how they're trying to map out the DMT realm, like I was talking about on stream last night.
The rapidity with which they learn the protocol and the accuracy and just the capabilities that they demonstrate so quickly and so efficiently, they are better viewers now than any of us ever were back in the unit. And I don't have any problem saying that. And anybody that disputes that from the unit, don't forget, I saw everything you ever did. I saw everything you ever did. And so that's why I'm making that statement. I see viewers now that are absolutely flat out astounding in what they're capable of doing. I mean, and they move quickly. They graduate quick. I mean, they get better and better so fast. It's amazing to see it happen. And because I think there are a lot of things, the morphic resonance, but I also think, this collective unconsciousness, the ritual structure, which is so important to humanity. And also, there's also the idea that there's so much information out there now. The feedback is so much better. I mean, to sit down and look at a 25-minute video of a target you just did, right? That's a powerful experience. And then to get something that gives you quantifiable, measurable attributes, I'm talking fast now, all of the, pick photos that accompany that. I mean, good, high res, color photos embedded in the document you get. It's so much more elaborate now, and it's so much better feedback that it propels viewers faster and better than they ever could have back in the days when, half the time when you did an operational target, you didn't get any feedback on it. Or maybe you did later on, like 6 months down the road. Finally, they close out that target and say something about it. But it was never immediate feedback in operational targets for the most part. And the feedback given to you was minimal. And you were relegated to, going to the library and trying to find what you could find in the library that might help answer what it is that you did. So it's easier now. There's so much more ability to, at the speed of electrons, access something and read more about it. So I think that's also contributed to the learning process that's ongoing. But we found there was once described by the viewers a target in an OpenSearch Outward that the majority of the viewers that were there described it as like standing in a stream, like against the stream, and standing in the stream and seeing elements, like moments, like snapshots of time going by them, and they would be there. This was one that ended up being called, kind of nicknamed the Cosmic Web. So people were standing in this thing, and how many people saw it, how they interpreted it, were like literally like little strips of, film playing, or like televisions. Remember now, that's not what's going on. This is just the conscious mind, interpreting what it's perceiving using a four-dimensional language, right? A lexicon. So it creates something that it knows fits, but it could be completely wrong, and it is in this case. But what that came to the viewers in more significant ways was the fact that this was like a capillary system in the universe, and it was moving. It was moving like memory, or moving energy, or moving. A number of viewers over years came up with. One guy very powerfully came from Tasmania, and he said it's like a capillary system establishing balance between good and evil in the universe, like light and dark in the universe, which that's figuratively, right? That's a human interpreting something that up till that point, even science had not discovered. And then probably 10 years later, on either the cover of Scientific American or somewhere inside of Scientific American, they described this thing called the Cosmic Web, showing it in the artist's concept of, this fluorescent cloud of stuff that is constantly moving and in flux, and which is, a theoretical system for balancing things. I mean, the universe is a living, breathing organism, and we are discovering more about that every day in science. And this, to me, to see them do that, to see it correlate to old simple sketches, now they are much more elaborate. And then to see now science coming out with new discoveries, that, it substantiates what they're doing, what they were looking at. Not 100%, never will. It's not expected to, but the sketches match very closely what the artist's concept was that was made it into Scientific American with the study. So there's that. There were other OpenSearch Outward targets that brought you to alien life forms. So was the thing that'll bend your mind around it is, okay, so are you saying that particular alien life form sat there at the control panel of that vehicle, which is a large ball that moved in and out of for it controlling, and it was this giant, being that was standing there, looked much larger than humans. And this is long before any of the, I don't know, like something, anything like, what was that movie? Where the last...
Prometheus.
Well, it's the extension of it, but it was Prometheus.
Yeah.
I mean, this was decades before Prometheus was even, ever created or thought about. And they were describing beings like that, or similar to it, with facial hair and that stuff. And it has, every time I've used that target, over 25,000 students, those who got to that level, same stuff. Now, again, I was trying to say...
Well, we'll end it there for now. I'm going to run my vacuum, so I'll probably hop on in a few minutes here. Might take a break, but thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time. We'll be live streaming almost every day, so be sure to subscribe. Thank you.